What is the best speed to retrieve a lure? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. I get asked this question a lot when I'm working different events around the country. People always bring up the topic about lure speed, so I want to dive into it in a little bit more detail today. Now, obviously, if you ask 100 anglers, you might get 100 different opinions, but I try to break it down real nice and simple here, so that's how I'm going to approach it. It's probably safe to say when we're using lures that are presented on the bottom, like your Texas rigs and your Ned rigs, Carolina rigs, those types of things, is as anglers, we fish them too fast. Now think about the prey species or just aquatic life in general that you notice in your lakes and rivers and ponds. Your crawfish will just sit there and sit there and sit there some more. Your things like your bluegills, your sunfish will just bury up in some weeds and just really not move around a whole heck of a lot. The bass are used to seeing that their prey species are not darting around all over the place. And another thing that I've really noticed when filming underwater is that bass are much more curious than we probably really think that they are. We often talk about how curiosity killed the cat, right? Well, I can't even tell you how many times we put lures in the water and we're filming them for this particular channel, and fish come from all over the place to look at them. Most of the time they don't eat them, but they come up and they will often get that close to that lure, really look at it, get down there with one eye and take a peek, and then they'll turn around and swim away. So they understand what's going on in their environment, and if it doesn't look natural, that is the first trigger that says, hey, I don't think I want to eat that. So we really need to slow down our lures, and depending on what type of angler you are, maybe that's slowing down the lure just to 5 seconds before you move it, or maybe it's 10 seconds. So if you're somebody that really likes to move quickly, this naturally could be something that is challenging, but I think that you'll find it makes a big difference. Now, I do want to clear up. I'm not talking about when we're throwing a jig and I'm hitting all kinds of cover down the shoreline and I pitch it, let it sink, get to the bottom, reel it in quick, pitch it again. That is not fishing too quickly because that lure is still falling at a natural rate. We let it get to the bottom, we bring it in and make another presentation. What I'm talking about is when we're dragging those lures along the bottom, we need to overall as anglers fish them way slower than we actually do. We need to approach it as an easy meal. If we can make our lures look like an easy meal, our odds go way up. For creatures to survive, all animals, they have to take in more calories than they burn. So if that bass is going to go after that bait, it's processing in its head instinctively, is this worth my time and effort? So if you have a lure that just looks, man, that is just too easy to resist and it looks very natural, your odds of getting bit definitely increase. Okay, so let's talk about just the opposite. When do we burn a lure? And I will be the first to admit I catch a ton of fish by burning a lure. Now, 99% of the time, this is going to be more of a horizontal presentation, square bill crankbaits, spinner baits, suspending jerk baits, that type of stuff. Now, when we burn a lure, what we're trying to do is to get that fish to react. Odds are it is not in a mood to eat. Now think about if you are sitting there in your chair in the living room and somebody comes up to you and flashes their hands in front of your face, or a bug flies in front of your face, what do? We react to it and we swat. Well, burning a lure is kind of that same thing. So you could have a bass nestled up in some vegetation and a spinner bait just burns right by them, and their instincts kick in and they want to react to it. And the instinct that I'm talking about is that feeding instinct. How many times have you been out on a tough day and you finally catch one? This is especially true of smallmouth, and you bring that smallmouth to the boat and there's 7 or 8 other fish there with it. You're thinking, what in the world? And they're all trying to get that lure out of that fish's mouth. That's because those other fish, the feeding instinct has been kicked in. So when a bass sees a burning lure like a square bill spinnerbait or a suspending jerkbait, and it's really slashing through the water, really kind of that idea of that fleeing minnow trying to escape can get them to turn the feed bag on. They don't want to miss out on what is going on. So it's like we have two extremes as far as lure speed: as slow as you can possibly go, or really burn it. But as anglers, most of the time, we spend it in that middle ground, and that middle ground probably gets the fewest amount of bites. And for me personally, the burning type of retrieve by far works the best when we've got some wind on the water and I'm trying to cover a ton of water. So I'm really picking off more of those fish that are more likely to be active. And so if I've got that trolling motor down and I'm going to town, that's when those types of retrieves do the best for me personally. Hey, if you would like to watch a video on burning a square bill, I've got one right here for you. Go ahead and check that one out. And don't forget to go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.